Okay.
Okay. So we're going to start now at the time.
I think it's 3 hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start. Yeah, I hope everyone can aware of the time that at the beginning, I think the time will be 1 hour before, but lucky we have time to comes up. Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone from all around the world. It's really nice to have the opportunity to meet all of you again once every month. Okay, hi, I'm Yudi from Indonesia, and tonight I will be co-hosting with Bruno from Mauritius. You want to say hi,
Hello,
Bruno?
everyone.
Okay, so as usual, before we start our SNS Wisdom, and because this is an community meet up also, and let's have a cheer up for each institute. So I will present the slide from, okay, I will send a request, Michael, to allow me to share screen. Okay. So we have our biggest voice, our louder voice to welcome for each institute from all around the world. As usual, we start from the Institute of NeuroSemantics, Africa. Where's your voice?
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
So,
Okay.
Mauritius, South Africa.
Yes. Okay, and the
Thanks,
next
Adrian.
one. Bruno.
And the next one is Australia.
They're going to have to
Hello.
wake up.
Yeah,
They may be shouting
probably
in their
around
dream.
11 midnight there.
Hmm. Okay, and the next one is Institute of Neurosemantics, Brazil.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Wow.
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Okay, and the next one.
Institute of Neurosemantics, Egypt, Middle East, and North Africa.
Yay.
Hello.
Bravo.
Okay, and the next one is Institute of Neurosemantics, Scandinavia. Where's your voice?
I don't think I saw anybody from Scandinavia online yet.
Okay, hopefully they can join
Hello.
soon. Hello.
Institute of Neurosemantics, Hong Kong and China.
大家好。
Hey, 大家好. Okay, and the next one is Institute of Neurosemantics, Indonesia. Halo, apa kabar?
Hello.
And the next one is
So Latin America, LATAM.
Bravo. Hello.
Okay.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
okay, and the next one is Institute of Neurosemantics, Malaysia, India, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam.
Yes. Selamat
Hello.
petang, selamat malam.
Hello. Hello.
And the next one
is Institute of Neurosemantics, USA.
Good
Yay. Good morning.
Good
morning.
So it's really the wonderful and the
Adrian,
richness of
all the flags.
I need
Yeah,
the
yeah,
others.
that's all
I
the
want
facts.
the others.
So this is the beautiful of our community because we have all around the world and we have an opportunity. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to able to meet each every month. And also beside we are meeting, we also learning something from Michael Hall. And so I didn't want to make the time more longer. So please welcome Dr. Michael Hall.
Thank you, Judy. So, welcome to everybody. As you well know, we've been focusing on thinking for humans for really all year, and we'll do that a little bit more next year. And we keep looking at the different kinds of thinking that we humans do, from hypnotic thinking to humorous thinking, metaphorical thinking. And today we're going to look at linguistic thinking, which really is the foundation of all of the 15 thinking skills that we do in the training, Thinking for Humans. So today we're going to look at a most unique aspect of how we think and the fact that probably 80 or 90% of all of our thinking is in words, with words, in words, through words. And we'll look at that and see what that means for us as human beings, what that means for us as neurosemanticists, and how that our thinking is so influenced, we could say controlled by words. So our first slide is from Gregory Bateson, and here's what he said about language, about words. He said in his book, Steps to an Ecology of Mind, the royal road to consciousness and to objectivity is through language and tools. And we'll come across that quote a little bit later as we start looking at language as tools. He also said that we are so befuddled by language that we cannot think straight. It was Bateson's influence on NLP, on the founders of NLP, that led to the discovery of the meta model for how to identify when language is ill-formed, when it's not well-formed, and when it's doing damage or it's deceiving us. So we'll be looking at how we're befuddled by language and how that we get into muddles because of words. And there's a big reason for that, which you'll see in a few minutes. Our next slide, thinking in two dimensions, brings up this subject that all thinking is not the same. My guess is that most people, if you ask them about thinking, what do you know about thinking? They would say something like, well, thinking is thinking. What is there to know about it? But all thinking is not the same. And it depends on what kind of thinking that you're speaking about. Some thinking is actually perceiving. That is what we call opening our eyes, opening our ears, looking around, seeing the world as it is. This is how thinking begins. It begins with sensory awareness of the world, what you see, what you hear, what you smell and taste and feel. And so some of our thinking is sensory based. How much? It's hard to tell. If that's all the kind of thinking we would do, we would be thinking like animals. That is, we would see and hear and smell and feel things, but we would not know what they are. We would not have a way to classify them. We would not be thinking conceptually at all. So the second dimension of thinking, the other thinking that we're talking about, is the thinking that we use to figure things out, create meaning. And so that's the two dimensions. We'll be mentioning the first one briefly, and then we'll go to the second one because that's where linguistic thinking occurs. Our next slide goes to that first dimension, that sensory-based dimension of thinking. We call it representational thinking, and we all do this. We really cannot not do this. Unless you're blind and deaf, you are making pictures in the movie in your mind. You are creating sounds and hearing words inside that movie. If you're inside the movie, you're feeling it. And if you're inside of it, you'd be smelling and tasting it. So sensory-based thinking occurs when you represent anything and hold that constant in your mind. And once you do that, once you hold it constant, now you can edit it. It's like you're having a thought. I wish that picture was brighter. I wish it was closer. Wish it was further away. I wish the sounds were louder or quieter. And so with that thought in the sensory realm, we can start now editing our movies. Of course, that's the realm that we call submodalities in NLP, and that's the first dimension. Well, we've already talked about that in some of the previous wisdoms that we've done. So let's go to the next slide, which is the second dimension. You may or may not know that in the early books of NLP, the second representational system was called the meta representational system. And that's what we mean by language. Later on, the most common phrase for this was auditory digital. I don't care for that phrase because it misses out on what it really is. It's a meta representational system. It is a system of thinking about our thinking. And so we go meta as soon as we use words. It's above and beyond what you see and hear, by which you're trying to make sense of the world. And so all of the words that you use make sense of your senses. So we have our senses, and then we make sense. That means it's invented. That means you're creating it. And that's the nature of words. Words and language is all made up. It's all invented. It's a construct that we use to be able to think humanly and do linguistic thinking, but it's not real. And that's one of the amazing things about linguistic thinking. Our next slide identifies the key to this, and that is that with words and with symbols, we move into a symbolic world. The meta-representational system of language sends you into the world of symbols. So every word is a symbol of something other than itself, which we know because we say, and we are clear that the map is not the territory. So the word dog references some canine, but the word dog cannot bite you. So there's no need to be afraid of that word. So now we're in the symbolic world. The word cat cannot scratch you. The word meal cannot fill your stomach. So this is basic NLP. The map is not the territory. It's a symbolic world. And yet it's so easy to forget that, as we'll see here in a few moments. So our next slide, as symbols of the world, words are not real. So say that to someone. Tell someone that words aren't real, and they'll probably argue with you that they are real. Well, they're not the real reference. They're just a symbol of something that's real. And so this is the nature of words. They're not real. They're useful to the extent that they help us to deal with the real world and that they have reference to the real world. Now, imagine a world without words. That's our next slide. A world where there's no words, where we don't speak. Then all we would have and be are the senses. And we would be lost in a primitive world of sights and sounds and sensations, no meanings, no concepts, no understandings, no beliefs, no values. It would not be a human world. So without words, we would be reduced to the animal world. Talk about an impoverished world, and it would not be human at all. So words serve as our doorway to the symbolic world of meanings. And now we get to the neurosemantics of words, that we live in a house of words. This comes from the phenomenologist Martin Heidegger, and that's our next slide. In the philosophy of phenomenology, which is a study of the senses and experience, your immediate experience, Martin Heidegger said, language is the house of the truth of being. He said language is the house of being. In its home, man dwells. Those who think and those who create with words are the guardians of this home. So think about that. We live in the house of words or the house of language. And our next slide, it picks this up a little bit further. What does this mean? If we live in the house of language, yet most of us don't know what this means. So it means several things. As we've already said, it means that words are not real. It means that all language is invented. And if it's invented by human beings, which means it's going to be fallible and it's going to be problematic. It means, as Alfred Korzybski said, whatever you say something is, it is not. And that leads us to a new realization, and a realization I think our society really needs. Words can't hurt you. So that means there's no such thing as verbal abuse. Now, when we talk about someone verbally abusing us, we mean that they use words that we didn't like. They use words that we consider curse words or ugly words or disrespectful words. That's what we mean by verbal abuse. But actually, to be abused by a word, you have to take that word and you have to use it as a symbol against yourself. That would be verbal abuse. So a lot of implications come from this fact that words are not real. When it comes to words, we have two kinds, one descriptive and one evaluative. Our next slide describes descriptive words. These are words that literally describe what you see and hear and smell and taste. They're sensory-based words. Now, these are powerful words because with them you can describe things clearly and precisely. With these words, you can think clearly and accurately with descriptive words because you can test them. They're empirical in that they immediately refer to something that you can test with your senses. These are the words that go easily into the movies in our mind. So if I'm talking about a brown dog running across the backyard, all of those words are descriptive words that I can see and hear in the movie of my mind. This enables us to describe out in the world cause-effect relationships. We can do linear thinking and narrative thinking. Narrative thinking is the stories that we tell about ourselves, our lives, who we are, how we got to where we are. And so descriptive words are really pretty powerful words. Our next slide, inside the inside world, the world of the mind, however, is made up of the symbolic world of language that forms the structure of our thoughts. So here we have a primary level, reality, the territory, and then we have a meta level, the representations of it, the words as maps to guide us in the outside world. And so distinguishing this helps us to understand the kind of words we're using. So the next slide. In our meta thinking, we use evaluative words. And we're doing meta thinking. So we're identifying what something is. Whenever you say that this thing is something and you name it, you have just created an evaluation of it. And so you've given it significance or values. You're answering the question, why is it important? And you might be identifying cause-effect relationships, which is an understanding, an interpretation, a concept in the mind, and you're describing how things work. So all of these are categories. So this is the category of identification, category of values, category of causation. There are 3 categories among 100 categories that we can mention. And this is how we think at the evaluative level. And this is what linguistic thinking is all about. Linguistically, with words, with phrases, now building up a map for the inside of our mind to understand, comprehend how things are. So linguistic thinking, that's our next slide. You think in words. I think in words. How much? It might be as much as 95% of the time. And the previous one, 95% of the time. I don't know. I don't know how to even measure it, except that the great majority of our mental and emotional energy is at the linguistic level, not the sensory-based level. So we think in words at multiple levels. That's the reflexivity of words. The words can refer to words, and all the way up, level after level. And at the sensory level, it's descriptive. All the other levels are evaluative. So that gives us our two categories of words, descriptive and evaluative. We say in NLP, if you can't make this distinction, if you can't hear when someone is talking, the difference between what they're describing and their evaluations, because their evaluations are going to be woven in intimately to everything that they say. If you can't separate that, you're not a professional communicator. This was a statement that was mentioned again and again in the book Structure of Magic, the first NLP book on the meta model, that we need to make this distinction. So our next slide, grounding words in reality, bringing words back to the sensory-based level. So this is what the meta model does. It starts with the abstract words, and then it takes us back to specifics and bringing us back down. So we start our mental life at the specific level, sensory-based. And we go to school, you learn language, you learn words, and the great majority of people move up to the abstract level. And for a great many of them, they have lost contact with the ground. So they're not in touch with reality. So abstract people, global people, people who do general thinking, that's where they're living, in the clouds of abstraction. Our next slide identifies these two critical levels of words, the descriptive level, the evaluative level. So can you hear the difference? The brown dog versus saying someone is rude. You can't see or hear or feel that. Everybody has their own interpretation of what they're going to classify as rude or as kindness. You can see a cat licking milk. You can't see leadership. You can't see what charming is referring to. These are categories, and everybody has the members of that class in that category, and it's unique to each person, which is why this is why we have to ask, what do you mean by rude? What do you mean by leadership? What do you mean by charming? So this is the challenge for us as linguistic thinkers to not confuse the two levels. So the next slide, words are tools for thinking. And if you got some modern tools, they're going to really help you. Our next slide, language as a tool. And that goes back to the quotation we started at the beginning, that the royal road to consciousness and objectivity is through language and tools. So words as symbols becomes tools for thinking. And if we think of them as that, it's a tool that helps me to do some thinking. And the fact that we use all of our thinking is in words, or nearly all of it. But the problem is tools can become old. And that's our next picture. Here's some old tools. And if you use old tools, then your words are going to be crude and unreliable, and especially those inherited from ancient times. And we've got a pile of them in our everyday language, words that we've inherited, words that really have lost all the meaning. And as a tool, they won't open anything. You can't really do anything with them because they're just ancient words that it's time to give them up. I'll give you some examples in a minute. Our next slide, words essential and problematic. So they can be very tricky and slippery and deceptive, and words can create all kinds of thinking traps. And this is what happens when we have cognitive distortions. We're overgeneralizing, we're personalizing, we're awfulizing, we're emotionalizing, we're labeling, we're doing either or kind of thinking and talking. And those kinds of words just create all kinds of thinking traps. So if you use the word, I have to go to work, I must go to work, the very word itself creates a sense of a demand or prison, and you don't have a choice. That's what we learn from inferential thinking. We can infer what is implied in that word. And so with words, we get so muddled in our thinking that oftentimes our minds are so confused, we're unable to think clearly. And so that's what we deal with the meta model and with neurosemantics. The solution is so simple. The next slide, the meta model. So the solution is really simple. We have to be wary of language and words because they can be untrue and false and confusing and disorienting and entrapping. They can induce us into destructive and even dysfunctional trance states. So if a word or language can be so ill-formed, we need a way to clean them up, recreate them, make them well-formed. And that's what the meta model is, what the meta model can be used for. Now we can start questioning the words we're using and if they're creating a muddle or some deception, we can identify that and clean it out. So here's an overview of the meta model, the next slide. This I hope makes the meta model simple. The meta model is a linguistic distinction that gives you a clarifying question. That's all it is. Just some linguistic distinctions. If you can make these distinctions, then you can ask the question. And that will be the key. So we have four basic categories: things that we've left out, deletions, things that we've overgeneralized, and we've been too global in our thinking about, things, language and words that we have distorted and changed the very structure of it, and assumptions that we're assuming without asking any question. So our next slide, if you know the distinction, you can ask the question. So I'm not going to go into the meta model in great detail here. There's times we've done that. And that's what any basic NLP training will do with the meta model, teach you the distinction. Then you can ask the question. So you and I, we think through language. That's our next slide. We think through language. It's an instrument for our thinking. The language shapes and forms and molds your thinking. So you take a word and it's like a box. It's like a filter, but you're inside the filter. And so you see the world through the filter, you're in the box, and the box shapes all of your thinking, all of your assuming, all of the things that you can infer and that you imply. And so it really is very controlling. So the power of language and its danger is that it shapes the mind so that we think in a certain way and don't know that we're doing it. So what is a word doing to you? That's the question. I've asked it many times in coaching. Someone will be using some language. I'll say, let's look at that word. What is that word doing to your mind, to your emotions? Is it a word as a symbol that creates a map for how to navigate this territory that you want to navigate? So, do you know how your words and language is shaping your mind? So, it's not just shaping how you see something, it's shaping your mind and therefore really deeply controlling you. Our next slide has a picture of this. Language shaping thoughts. It doesn't seem this way to the way we experience our everyday lives. We think that we think, and then we use language to represent what we're thinking. But actually, it's the other way around. The language we use shapes how we think, which is why every time you learn a different language system, you're going to learn a different way to think and have new kind of insights and awarenesses that you can't have in the other language. Amazing, isn't it? Our next slide, thinking through language number one. So as you classify, so you live in that world. Your labels are your world. So if you use the word failure, that's that first example there. If you don't succeed on the first or the 10th attempt, you're a failure. And you use that word, then failure becomes a box, a map of a world that has many applications, implications, assumptions, and you live in that world and you think that way. And when someone tries to give you a reframe and to say, you just learned how not to do it, you know better because you live in that word, which is formulating a way of thinking in your mind. To receive criticism from someone else, if you call it verbal abuse, which is just as erroneous as it can be, then you're going to be abusing yourself with those words. If you receive slander on social media, and if you call it bullying, which is a metaphor, a bull charging you with his horns, trying to ram you and trying to destroy you, it was just slander. So it was words that are not true to you, to your perception. If you feel down and discouraged and you call it depression, anomalization, if you call it that, then the verb underneath there is depressing, pressing down your hopes, your dreams, your energy, your love, your care. The words create not just the lens that you have of the world, but the box that you're living in. So pretty dangerous. So be careful the labels you use. The labels you use is the world you live in. Number two is the next slide. As you generalize, so you believe. So we generalize. We draw a conclusion. We believe that this is the way of the world. And it creates all kinds of overgeneralized or global perceptions. And here's some of these linguistic distinctions of the meta model. And each of these are leading us to overgeneralize things. We say everybody or nobody or always or never, and that's the universal quantifier. We have some ways of operating, modal operators, and those ways of operating then control the world we live in. One person says, I have to do this project. The other person says, I get to. I can do this project. I want to do this project. The word changes the world you live in. Lost performatives are sentences that we don't know who made that map, but it continues to be a truism or a statement that everybody thinks, of course it's true. We don't even ask who made that map, when and where. So it's a lost performative. Either or creates a polarized world, is this or that, good or bad, failure or success, and there's nothing in between. A very impoverished world indeed. The next slide has some examples of these. So no one ever does anything for me is that universal quantifier. And a person who lives in that world, a victim. That's the box that they've created themselves for. The lost performative, it takes money to make money. Well, says who and when and under what conditions? And if you take that as a principle, as a law of the way the world works, then you've limited yourself to only one way to make money. So these are examples of the overgeneralization, and that when we overgeneralize, it leads us to believing certain things. Once you believe that certain thing, it's a command to your nervous system, and now it seems so real that it's unquestionable. And that's the problem. That's the problem with beliefs. We begin thinking they're so real, we don't even question them. The next slide, number 3, as you distort, you create dysfunction and human pain. And we can use all kinds of words to create all kinds of distortions. And probably a good example of this list here, once again, linguistic distinctions that we need to know, is the next slide. So the next slide, an example, she puts a dog before me, making me feel depressed. So this cause effect statement puts you into a world where you're the victim. She's making you feel different things. And so her actions are the source and the cause of your emotions. Very distorted. It's not the way that it works. Your neurology does not work that way. Mine doesn't work that way. But when you create a sentence, that sentence now can be a sentence for some dysfunction. That one is a dysfunction of being a victim. The complex equivalence example here is when he raises his voice, I know he hates me. So here's two things, one thing inside, one thing outside. Outside, he raises his voice. Inside, we're guessing, we're mind reading, we're assuming that there's hatred. And hatred is driving him to do what he's doing. We don't know that's the case. It could be, and it could very well not be. So here's the distortion. The normalization, his communications devastate my self-esteem. Try to make a picture of that in your mind, in the movie in your mind. Communications. What communicate? Who's communicating to who? How? In what way? At what time? And how does that devastate, completely destroy, another general overgeneralization, self-esteem, which is what? You esteeming yourself, or you thinking about how they esteem or not esteem you. Anyway, the distortions, the convolutions that end up create such muddledness that it's hard to think straight. In fact, you cannot think straight with these kinds of statements. And what we need to know is the linguistic distinction and then the question. So the question helps us to be free from these distortions. Finally, the fourth category that we mentioned earlier is assumptions. When you assume, you impose your world on other people. So we do this unconsciously. It's built into language, but if we can catch it, if we wake up and become conscious of it. And this is where presuppositions, identifications, etc. occur. The next slide gives some examples. So for a presupposition, how guilty do you feel knowing that John failed his test? Well, the little word how is the key here. How guilty do you feel? Because if you answer the question, how guilty, let me see, how guilty do I feel? If you answer that question, you have assumed and taken on the presupposition that John has failed his test. You know that he failed the test, and somehow you feel guilty that he failed the test. So more muddledness, more convolution. No wonder we can't think straight when we hear these kinds of things. So this is linguistic thinking, and linguistic thinking is what we all do. We do it all day. It's the kind of thinking we use when we talk to ourselves, our self-dialogue. So now that you know all of that, our next slide and our final slide, the warning. words and language that we use can be very dangerous to our health, to our sanity, to our effectiveness. Knowing that, then we need to take heed, and we need to use our skepticism to question the words and question the language that we use. These are some of the most foundational critical thinking skills: questioning and doubting. And when it comes to language, because it is so powerful, we need to ask lots of questions. So learn the ill-formed nature of words and the linguistic distinctions of the meta model. Then we can ask the right question. The right question as to what the word means and what we're going to do with it. So linguistic thinking, we could speak a whole lot more about it. Linguistic thinking takes up all of the hypnotic thinking we do, all of the narrative thinking, all of the metaphorical thinking. So it's what we do, and it's what we need to be aware of.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I think it's now for the Q&A session. Okay, everyone, do you have any question you want to ask? You can write down in the chat, or you can just
And a great question would be if you have a word or phrase that you use a lot and that you might want to call in question.
Okay, so you have a words something, or you want just simply unmute yourself and just share your words. Okay, anybody? Before we go to the breakout room, and I believe there will be a lot of questions, because this is very interesting for me, especially the one that when you say that, yeah, you actually the language is shaping my thought, and by learning about several languages is also can help me to expanding my thought, help me to have a different kind of thinking. It's really like a aha moment for me to have that kind of knowing, because yeah, usually I say that the language is representing what's in my thought, but actually the language that I use is shaping my thought. It's really like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any others want to ask a question, or you don't have a question? Or maybe we go to the breakout room first. Oh, okay. So this is a question. So strengthening my language thinking from Roberia. So strengthening my language thinking, it will enhance my memory and also elevate my capability of oratory.
Well, yes, I think that those things will come. Those things are secondary. Your memory is really a function of what's important to you. Whatever is meaningful and significant, that's what we remember. If something isn't that memorable or isn't important to you, you're not going to remember that. So memory comes later. Memory comes when the language is just right and fits. And when the language doesn't fit, it's hard to keep it in mind, hard to remember it. Now, in terms of oratory or your rhetoric with other people, the more you can shift your evaluative thinking to descriptive thinking so that your language is really crystal clear, it'll be more precise, it'll be more accurate. And that'll make you a much better speaker, communicator.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Oberia. And there's another question from Manal. Which is the distortion that was relevant to the victim mindset? I didn't catch that, and if you can elaborate on that.
Which was the distortion that was relevant to?
The victim mindset. Victim mindset.
Victim.
Victim.
Victim mindset.
Well, victim will come from cause effect. Whenever you say that something makes you feel, you have just entered into the world of victimhood. Because every emotion is yours. It's in your body. It came from your mind. It's inside your nervous system. So anytime you use cause effect in that way, you're a victim. Complex equivalence implies causation. So whenever you equate two things that are not equivalent and you put yourself at the disadvantage of one of those things, then once again, you made yourself a victim. Whenever you use a phrase like verbal abuse, you have just mapped victimhood into your world, that there's such a thing as people have that power over you. So there's lots of ways to create the mindset of being a victim.
And I'm guessing also that's why you said here in this slide, learn the cognitive distortions as well, because
Yeah.
the cognitive distortions reinforces the victim mindset.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Michael. You were saying about the ancient tools, in reference to words, and what are examples of words that are ancient that are not good tools for our thinking?
Well, so take the word intuition. That word is about as useful as elephant dung. Well, when are you going to use that? Intuition, intuit means to know. You pay a tuition to go to college, and intuition is what you know inside yourself, and what you know inside yourself, you learn. So a better way of talking about that is, what is the competency that you've learned, that you have integrated over a period of time, and you're highly competent and you know it? Now we call that intuition. Intuition gets people thinking that they can just feel something out there in a moment and know the truth of it without any learning. So it's just an old ancient word that we need to get rid of. There's lots of words like that.
Any other word?
Oh, yes, there's lots and lots of words like that.
Okay. Like what else? Because intuition is commonly used, and then now you say it's not. So I'm wondering what other commonly used words would be ancient.
If you read Science and Sanity, Alfred Korzybski spent, I think, 5 or 6 pages on the word heat as an ancient word that has no reference. And he said that's why physicists, for years and years, trying to find out what heat is, never could find out what it is, because it sounds like it's a substantive. It sounds like it's a thing. And now we know it's a process, interaction between two things that generates what we call heat. So once again, in science has to throw out a lot of these everyday words and create specialized words so that we can talk with precision and accuracy about what we're thinking about.
Okay. I think we answer 3 more questions, then we go to the breakout room, okay? So that's from Jeff. Michael, I'm just wondering, considering the diversity of language spoken worldwide, how do you think this linguistic variety affect the way people think? How about people that have vocabulary for different language? How will it affect their thinking?
Well, once again, the more symbolic systems you know, the wider, the more expansive your intelligence and your ability to think. So, your basic language, if you learn a couple more languages, it's going to give you different perspective. If you learn a simple system like mathematics, that's going to offer you a different one. Geometry, that's going to offer you a different one. Chemistry, that's going to offer you a different one. Every language system that you pick up is going to expand your consciousness, your ability to think in different terms. So that's why Howard Gardner now has 8, maybe 9 multiple intelligences, different ways of thinking that helps us to expand our way of thinking. So sometimes in our language, we don't have a word that just exactly describes something. So Kaizen is a good one from Japan. It means continuous improvement. So it's a great word that identifies feedback, feed forward process that is dynamic. And so we borrow words from other languages in order to expand our own thinking abilities. The word Gestalt from German, meaning more than and different from the sum of the parts. And so we talk about a Gestalt state or Gestalt experience. And so with different languages, you can have new and different perspectives.
Interesting. I think I need to learn more languages. Okay, this is from Xiaotong. I will read, but there's some words that I need to be clarified. Maybe someone can help me. Say that, excuse me, teacher, excuse me, Michael, what are the difference in the language mastered by Ta-Cheng coaches? This is what I didn't know what is mean by Ta-Cheng coaches. And NLP practitioner, if we aim to further enhance language thinking skill, what an action plan can we adopt? Maybe someone can help me from China or Hong Kong. Ta-Cheng.
Ta-Cheng means meta coaches.
Oh, meta coach. Oh, the language, the difference between the language master by meta
Well,
coach.
this is what they translate.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Xiaohong.
Well, there's no difference between meta coaches and NLP practitioners. I mean, what we've done in neurosemantics is to develop some new models, some new patterns, processes, but there's not. I would say there's not hardly any difference in the languages mastered.
Okay. So the last one before we go. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Madhyajan, please.
Just a question. If we aim to further enhance language thinking skills, what action
Well,
plan
if there's
can
no
we
differences, then the question's irrelevant.
Mhm. I was just thinking and correct my understanding with this question because you highlighted the difference, knowing the distinction between descriptive language and
Yeah.
evaluative
Yeah.
language. Would that, as a starting point, enable us to really,
Well, sure.
Even with understanding the different languages with other cultures, for example, knowing what is descriptive and what's evaluative.
Sure, that's the basis. That is
Yeah.
that is NLP 101. The difference between descriptive and evaluative. Are you describing? Can I see it, hear it, feel it? Or are you judging it in some way?
Okay, Michael, I need your help to make me become a co-host or host to arrange the breakout room for our next session.
Okay.
Okay, so before we go to the next question, let's go to the breakout room first, and then after the breakout room, then we will go for the Q&A. Can you make me a co-host?
And how do I do that?
Go to the participants, find my name, and then you right-click the mouse. Hey, is it the right one? And then you co-host. Can you find it?
Okay.
Okay. So now I become the host. Okay. Okay, let me arrange for the breakout room first. Let me share. So this is the question will be discussed. The first question will be discussed in the breakout room. So it's about how conscious are you on a daily basis about the words and language that you use? How much more conscious do you need to be? And the second is, what would help you to become more conscious of your words and language and how they may be at the source of your problem, stress, or emotions? You can take the picture before you go to the breakout room. Okay, let me create the breakout room first. Okay, so are you ready for the first breakout room? Then you will move to the breakout room.
How much time you need?
Oh yeah, it will be a 10 minutes. Thank you, Bruno. After 10 minutes, I will bring you all back to the main room and you share the question. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Anybody want to share something about the discussion in the group? Any insight or any aha moment that want to be shared to the others? Okay. If not, nobody, nobody but you. Okay. If not, then we go to the question again before we go to the another breakout room, Michael. Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
sure.
there's a one question from Srita. I hope I didn't misspell your name. So if I have learned three languages, therefore each language distinctively shape my thought, therefore do I sort of have a different identity depending on which language I use?
Well, probably not. If you spoke one language exclusively and then you traveled somewhere else and used another language exclusively, mm, maybe that would have some big effect on your identity, but probably not. Um, the languages we learn, we tend to pull together um, uh, into an integrated way.
Okay, thank you. And the one question before we go to the breakout room is considering that this is from Ronald, considering that the words in our native language carry a large part of our history, how can other language lead us to stories we don't yet know?
Well, um, when you learn the other languages, you will be learning stories that you did not know before. Um, and when you do any kind of search about any word, whether in a dictionary or encyclopedia, sometimes finding the history of where that word came from, what it was used for originally, and how it shifted its meaning over time. Uh, Sometimes that's one way to learn about the words we have in our language and the words in other languages. Um, there's lots and lots of books that do just that. Just look at specific words and where they came from and the stories behind them.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So
Thank you.
let's we go for the second discussion in the breakout room. So this will be you discuss. This is also testing your knowledge. There are 21 linguistic distinctions of the meta model. How many of them are you familiar with? And how many of them are you aware as you speak? And do you have any plan to study the meta model and or the cognitive distortion so that you can be more aware of the words and language that you use? If so, what are your plans? Okay, so get ready to the breakout room. Let me create first to reduce it. Happy discussion.
Where's Shweta? Where did I go?
Now it's already in the main room, CD.
Anywhere.
Okay, so all of you already back from the breakout room. Anybody want to share anything that being discussed in the room? It seems like, I don't know, CD, you maybe have something to share because it seems like so fun in your room, in the breakout room.
No,
No?
no, not really. But one I could say that it's important to ask these questions that create specificity. You know, there was a situation where someone was saying, in our program, we don't want a lot of speeches. So it will depend on what does that want, what does it mean specifically? Because then it created a conflict. One would have asked to say, to ask their understanding, because even when people were speaking for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, it was still a lot. So it is important for the purpose of avoiding conflict to say, when you say you don't want people to talk a lot in the program, what does it mean? Specifically, are we saying that you don't want people to speak at all in this program, or are we saying, because then 5 minutes also became enough, too much, you know? But they had a different understanding, I had a different understanding, and I compiled a program where I said people will speak 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and the main person will speak for 10 minutes. But then I was told, we said we don't want a lot of talking. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, CD, for that. Do you want to comment something about that, Michael?
Well, it's a good example of why we need dialogue rather than speeches. In
Fantastic.
dialogue, dia, logos, words, meaning, going through, dia, going through us. And when one person says something, then another person says something, then his meanings come back through me. I consider them, think about them. My meanings go back, and then it's dynamic. And then we're not sitting around waiting till somebody gets done.
Mm,
And why we really emphasize dialogue is the really heart of conversation.
mm. Thank you, Michael. Anybody want to share something from the discussion in the group, in the breakout room? Okay, if not, then we are at the edge of our session. Michael, do you want to have a closing statement to all of us?
So I would just say that uh, be aware of the house of language that you're creating. Your words are creating uh, a house that you live in, a world that you live in, and if the world you're living in, if the house of language doesn't seem to be the best place to live, first place to check is what are the words I'm using that is now creating this world and controlling my thoughts, my emotions, my responses. Um, we inevitably think in words and language, but words and language should be our tools and our servants rather than we being the servant of them.
Hmm. Thank you, Michael, for a wonderful presentation and a reminder for us to make our language as our tools, and we are become the master of our language instead of the language instead of we become the servant of our language. So we need to how to handle our language really well and use it as a tool. So to our best in language. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you, Anthony from Malaysia. Thank you, Bruno from Mauritius. Thank you, Mariani from Indonesia, part of the leadership team. And thank you, Muhammad from Egypt. And I think that's all from the leadership team.
Are we
And thank
taking
you,
a
everyone.
picture? Are we taking a picture today? We're not taking pictures.
Okay. I have an issue to take a picture from my laptop now. Anybody want to help to taking a picture and share into the chat later on?
Everyone turn on your cameras first.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
That's a good idea.
Yep, then we can see you. Everybody ready? Come on. I see a lot of black
Beautiful.
screens here. Turn on your cameras. Ready? 1, 2. There you go. How many pages? We got 1 page only, okay? Okay. One more chance to turn on your camera. 1, 2, 1, 2. Turn on. Boom. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you all again in the next month session.
Bye-bye.
Michael. Thanks, Geraldine.
Good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you. Thank you,
See
Michael.
Thanks,
you.
Michael Geraldine.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy
Yeah.
weekend.
Yes, happy weekend to you too. Okay.